This NBA season, Domantas Sabonis is set to make over $40 million. And with a salary that high, of course, there are astronomical expectations. There are many around the league, some even in Sacramento, who feel that Domantas Sabonis is not worth that kind of money. But I do, and I'll explain why right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Head to GameTime.com, download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and as you on YouTube can see, I'm in a different location. I am actually inside of Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, of course, the home of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm here covering 49ers training camp for ABC 10. And in addition to helping kill the time during the off season, training camp is also fun to follow the differences, of course, between the NFL and the NBA, particularly around this time with the San Francisco 49ers when it comes to paying players, right? The last three training camps, the storylines have been dominated by guys holding out for contracts. A couple of years ago, it was Deebo Samuel. Last year, it was Nick Bosa. Now, it's Rockland's Brandon Ayuk. Well, the Kings, they don't have to deal with that concern, thank goodness, with Domantas Sabonis. The first opportunity they had to extend him, they got that deal done, which of course was extra important considering that the Kings traded away Tyrese Halliburton, NBA All-Star, for Domantas Sabonis. So they needed to get that deal done. They ultimately got that deal done. And it's a lot more common, of course, in the NFL for contract holdouts to happen than in the NBA. The Kings still were able to avoid that. That being said, Domantas Sabonis is entering year one of his 4-year, $186 million contract. Year one. Now, this was a contract extension, so technically he signed this, I think, before last season, but last season was the final year of his former contract, which was a bargain compared to what the Kings are paying Domas now. He's going to make $40.5 million this season. Imagine that, $40.5 million. And there are many that I've talked to around the league and some in Sacramento who just don't feel that Domantas Sabonis is worth that kind of money. And the reason why has almost exclusively to do with his ability as a scorer, his ability to put the ball in the basket. People think in the NBA, scoring is at a premium. How you score the basketball is the most valuable skill you can have. Yes, there are other skills outside of it, but scoring is what gets you paid. The amount of points that you put up is ultimately what gets you the biggest paycheck. And for the most part in the NBA, that is true. There are some exceptions here and there, but for the most part, if you can score the basketball at a high level in the NBA, you are going to get paid. And there's some that look at Domantas Sabonis and do not put him in that category as an elite scorer. And honestly, they're right. I would not consider Domantas Sabonis to be an elite scorer. There are those that criticize his ability to go out and get the Kings a big bucket when they need one, right? There's those who criticize how Domantas Sabonis played, of course, in the playoffs two playoffs ago when he struggled to score the basketball consistently against the Golden State Warriors, who straight up game planned to give him open mid-range jumpers because they didn't think that he would hit them, and they ended up being right. Those criticisms are valid. But there's more to scoring than being the guy to put the ball in the basket. And that's what I'm going to dive into here in just a little bit. First off, Sabonis is not a scrub offensively, right? Even scoring the basketball, he still averages 19 points per game. He's averaged 19 points per game the last 2 seasons in Sacramento. His career high is just over 20 points per game when he made the All-Star team as a member of the Indiana Pacers. So 19 points per game is really solid. It's nothing to roll your eyes at. But again, you don't see a lot of guys who average 19 points per game getting paid $40 million a year. So it is a valid criticism. But Matt, why do you feel like he is worth that money? Well, first off, Sabonis has shown the capability to be able to put up big scoring nights if needed, right? He had 6 games last season, over 30 points. Another 11 games on top of that where he had 25 or more points. So he's more than capable of scoring the basketball. He does it every once in a while. He's not a guy like De'Aaron Fox or maybe DeMar DeRozan, who the Kings are going to look at to do that every night. And certainly if the Kings get back into the postseason and hopefully go on a deep postseason run, there are going to be times in games where they need Sabonis to go and get him them a bucket. And how he plays in those moments is going to either make or break the way some people view him, especially as a $40 million per year player. But look, there is more to scoring than just putting the ball in the basket. And when you look at this and break this down, this is what makes you realize that Sabonis is paid appropriately. Let's talk about the combination of points and assists, right? Sabonis averages 19 points per game and 8 assists per game. That means with 8 assists minimum, he's responsible or directly involved in 16 more points being scored. He's directly involved in it. Now, that's minimum, right? Because some of those baskets could be 3-point baskets. At minimum, all of those baskets are 2-point baskets. So let's just assume it's the minimum. All 8 of those assists are on 2-point baskets. So that would be 19 points plus 16 points. We're talking about a combined 35 points per game that Domantas Sabonis is directly involved in. 35 points out of the 116 points per game that the Kings average is 30%. So 30% of the points that the Sacramento Kings scored last season, Domantas Sabonis is directly involved in. For context, De'Aaron Fox, with his 26 points and 5 assists per game average, is responsible for 36 points minimum. So only 6 points more than Domantas Sabonis. But he's a point guard, right? Different positions. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other highest paid centers in the league. We'll start with the big 2 names, right? The 2 that are absolutely 100% above Domantas Sabonis. 2 MVPs. Joel Embiid averaged 34 points and 5 assists per game. Combined, again, assuming all of those assists are minimum 2-pointers, we're talking about 43 points. That's 37% of the amount of points that the Philadelphia 76ers averaged per game. So 37% for Joel Embiid versus 30% for Domantas Sabonis. Yeah, there's a pretty big gap there. That's why Joel Embiid is an MVP and is one of the highest paid players in the league, period, not just big men. And Domantas Sabonis is a very talented, very respected all-NBA player who isn't in that MVP conversation. Let's talk about the reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic. He averaged 28 points and 9 assists for the Denver Nuggets last season. Combined, that's 44 points minimum, which is 38% of the Denver Nuggets. Again, these are guys that are at the very, very top, literally the best players in the league over the last 2 years. 38% to Domantas Sabonis' 30. All right, there's a clear gap between him and between them. But they're being paid in the 50s, million-wise. Sabonis is being paid in the 40s. But how about Anthony Davis? He's not just a guy that Domantas Sabonis dominates in one-on-one matchups. Domas, in his career, has literally never lost against Anthony Davis at any point. He dominated AD last year in Sacramento, too, and I will always bring that game up. Anthony Davis, who is considered to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, absolute superstar in this league, right? Averaged 24 points, so more scoring than Domantas Sabonis, but only 3 assists per game, right? Passing is not AD's game. Rebounding is AD's game. Well, Sabonis both outpasses and out-rebounds Anthony Davis. We'll get into the rebounding a little bit, but that combined is 30 points minimum, which is less than Domantas Sabonis, and that's 25% of the Lakers' total. So we consider Anthony Davis to be a significantly better player who deserves to be paid more than Domantas Sabonis because of his scoring ability. And yet when you look at this, you realize that the points that Davis is impacting overall through scoring and assisting compared to Sabonis, who's scoring and assisting, Sabonis provides more offense and more total points than Anthony Davis does. Now, this is not an argument to suggest that Davis has not had a better career than Domantas Sabonis or anything like that. I absolutely agree that Anthony Davis is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. But we look at AD as 100% worth the money, even with the injury issues that Sabonis doesn't have, by the way. Domas plays every single game. Anthony Davis does not. But even with the injury issues, if someone were to pay Anthony Davis $40 million, I think we'd all go, yeah, duh, it's Anthony Davis. Like, give him his money. But with Sabonis, because Davis scores 5 more points per game than Domas, Domas is not worth $40 million per year. Again, that's just talking about points and assists, but what about rebounding as well? Because the rebounding numbers, Sabonis is literally the king of rebounds in the NBA. 2 straight years where he's led the league in rebounding. That, of course, comes with offensive rebounding too, which creates second chance point opportunities. Domantas Sabonis was 3rd in the NBA in offensive rebounds with 3.6 offensive rebounds per game. The Sacramento Kings were 9th in the NBA in second chance points at 14.6 second chance points per game. I know we're getting into the weeds of numbers a little bit, but this does well to illustrate how Sabonis impacts scoring without just being the guy to put the ball in the basket. The fact that Sabonis is one of the top offensive rebounders in the league, and the Sacramento Kings are a top 10 second chance points team in the league, suggests that a vast majority of those second chance points that the Kings are creating is because Sabonis is the one buying them another possession in the first place. It's not a direct tie to being the guy to score those points, but it's another layer that you add on to why he's a $40 million per year player. He does it all on the offensive end. He can score, maybe not at the elite level of some of his counterparts and some of the other highest paid players in the league, but he can score at a rate that you have to respect and be aware of. He's the best rebounder in the NBA 2 seasons in a row. And not only is he a great passer, second only to Nikola Jokic as a center in the league, he is the guy that the Sacramento Kings run their entire offense through. And we're talking about one of the best, most lethal offenses in NBA history going back to 2 seasons ago. All the numbers on the offensive end show that Sabonis is one of the best, most elite players in the league. So you pay him like it. You pay him the $40 million a year that he's worth now, and it's going to go up year after year. He should be criticized, but he's earned this money based off of how he's played to this point. Now that he's paid amongst the best in the league, can he maintain that, and can he even improve upon that when the Sacramento Kings get back to the postseason? That's a fair question. But he's been paid for what he's already done, and he is worth the money that he has because of what he's already accomplished and the clear impact on success that he has had. The minute he's come here to Sacramento, this organization has been completely different. But let's talk about where Domantas Sabonis falls in terms of the overall rankings of highest paid players in the league. We'll talk about that. You'll be surprised about some names that are paid more than him that I believe he is 100% better than. We'll talk about that in just a second. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Whatever tickets you're looking for, whether it's for a sporting event, a concert, a theatrical production, whatever the case may be, if you want to go to an event and need to buy tickets, Game Time is the place for you to buy tickets. Hey, maybe you want to come here to Levi Stadium and you want to watch the San Francisco 49ers play this year. Game Time will not be beat by anybody else. In fact, they have the Game Time guarantee where if you find a ticket in the similar area or the same ticket on a different website that is cheaper than the Game Time price, they will credit you 110% of the difference. But here's the thing with Game Time. The closer you get to the actual event starting, the better the price is going to be. You can save up to 60% just by waiting until a day or two before the event. So say the 49ers are playing the New York Jets week 1 on Monday Night Football. You wait till Saturday or Sunday to buy the ticket. You're going to get it cheaper than even if you were to buy the ticket in advance right now. They have flash deals that can't be beaten, zone deals that can't be beaten, and a feature that you have to toggle. It's their all-in pricing feature, which means that the price that you see for your seat, that is the price, right? None of these hidden fees and stuff that you get hit at the final checkout screen. What you pay is what you see right when you select your seats. And plus, they have Game Time ticket coverage that cannot be beat. If something happens with the event or something happens with you, Game Time will help work with you to make sure you can get your money back or make sure you're taken care of, because they don't just want to rip you off when accidents or some things in life just happen. Go to Game Time today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's $20 off your first purchase with code LOCKEDONNBA. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So where does Domantas Sabonis fall in the payroll rankings? $40 million per year, that's pretty significant, right? He's actually the 25th fifth highest paid player next season. There are 24 players next season who are paid more than him. That includes names like Zach LaVine. The 26th highest paid player is Ben Simmons. So it could be a whole hell of a lot worse. There are a lot worse ways to spend your money, Sacramento, than giving Domantas Sabonis $40 million per year. But Sabonis is actually the 7th highest big man paid. There are 6 bigs in this league who are paid more annually than Domantas Sabonis is. We're talking about Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, and Pascal Siakam. Now, personally, looking at that list, I don't really have an issue with any of those guys being paid more than Sabonis. Maybe Rudy Gobert, but I understand he's paid for the multi-time defensive player of the year that he is and not for being a scorer. Domantas Sabonis is 100% a better scorer than Rudy Gobert is, right? 100%. You'd never talk about Rudy Gobert being paid and say it's because of his offense that he got paid. And I know there are some people that criticize the amount of money that Rudy Gobert is making. However, Rudy does his defense. He plays his defense so freaking well. Teams feel that he is worth that kind of contract. Same way the Sacramento Kings feel that Domantas Sabonis is worth the money that he is making because he is so elite overall as a rebounder, a passer, and a scorer, an overall team guy, that you just can't afford to lose him by trying to underpay him, and then another team wises up and gives him the money that he is worth, right? If you don't like all 6 of those names that I listed, because maybe you say, Matt, some of them are forwards, not centers. Okay, if you're just talking purely centers, Domantas Sabonis is the 5th highest paid center. There are 4 centers in this league that are paid more than Domantas Sabonis is, and yet, for 2 straight seasons, Sabonis has absolutely been the 3rd best center in the NBA. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, at the top, not being touched. Put them on a tier of their own. Sabonis is number 3. Davis, Gobert, they've been underneath him. Bam Adebayo, underneath him. Now, we can argue all the time, which one of these guys would you rather have? If you're building your team, schoolyard pick. You picking Sabonis, you picking Anthony Davis, you picking Gobert. Who are you picking and why? You can have fun with that on NBA 2K if you'd like. But for the Sacramento Kings, they have this talent here in Sacramento. The object is to keep this talent here in Sacramento, so you pay him what he's worth. And he's still being paid less than all of these guys, despite the fact that he is a top 3 center in this league and has proven to be it more than just a one-hit wonder season. He's amongst the best in the league. He deserves to be paid like it. Now, there are some people that say, I trust all of those guys more in the playoffs than I do Sabonis. Now, that's a little broad. You trust Rudy Gobert's defense more in the playoffs than Sabonis's. Okay, I trust Sabonis's offense more than Gobert's in the playoffs. But Anthony Davis, sure, you trust his offense more in the playoffs because you've seen it. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, 100%, duh, absolutely. Even to some extent, like a Bam Adebayo, maybe you trust his offense more in the playoffs than Sabonis. I personally don't. I think Bam Adebayo is a significantly better defender than Domantas Sabonis is, and you can argue which one you'd rather have all you want. But the point is, again, we're not talking about whether or not Sabonis deserves to be paid more than all those guys. We're talking about whether or not he deserves to be paid amongst those guys. So if you don't trust Sabonis to score at the same level that those guys can score, again, I kind of get it. You're basing it completely off of one playoff series, really. And the eye test was alarming in that playoff series. Sabonis still averaged a 16.11 rebound double-double against the Golden State Warriors. But those who watched the series clearly saw that he was at times a weakness for the Sacramento Kings. He did not play his best, and he will be the first guy to admit that. But all these guys have weaknesses, maybe outside of Nikola Jokic, right? Nikola Jokic, I don't think, has a weakness. He can literally do anything. Maybe defensively he's not the best, but he's a big body. Joel Embiid, the health issues, right? Anthony Davis, the health issues, plus not a good passer compared to Domantas Sabonis. Rudy Gobert, offensively, doesn't give you anything, but defensively is super, super good. All these guys have strengths and pitfalls to their games. Sabonis is no different than that. That's why Domantas Sabonis is not paid as the number 1 or number 2 player in the league. So, if you want to base how much a player should be paid solely off of the amount of points that he can score and how you feel he can provide go-to dominant scoring in a big game, if that's your measurement, then when you have billions of dollars and own a franchise, you can make that decision. But you need more than just scoring the basketball, of course, as the Sacramento Kings have clearly shown over the last couple of seasons. And on top of that, the Kings have now recognized that for what it is and gone out and made the right move by adding a DeMar DeRozan scoring first star to De'Aaron Fox and to Keegan Murray, who's expected to get better offensively, and bringing back Malik Monk, who has refined his offensive game as well. Right? The Kings can still pay a player $40 million per year and do what they need to do to surround that player with guys that help pick him up in areas that he is weaker. And just remember this too. This is important to point out. We're talking about the Sacramento Kings here. We're not talking about LA. We're not talking about Miami. We're not talking about these big markets that do have to worry about spending their money wisely, because every single year they're going to be in the market for whatever star is available simply because of where they are located. The Kings don't have that luxury, right? When the Kings get a player of Domantas Sabonis' status, an all-NBA caliber player, a player that leads the league in rebounding, one of the best passing bigs in the league, a player who's capable of scoring 20 points on a nightly basis and just missed that the last 2 seasons. The guy who can lead the league in triple-doubles and double-doubles. Like, if that player is available to you, you traded away an asset like Tyrese Halliburton to go out and get that. Of course you have to pay him. And if you don't like that argument and want to roll your eyes at that argument, I don't know what to tell you. Sacramento is different. It's the reality of the league. You want to think it's an even playing field, but it's not. Yes, everybody has the same salary cap, but ultimately, different markets draw more than Sacramento does, and that will forever be the case, right? So the Kings have to hold on to talent of Sabonis' level. They cannot afford to let that walk or try to underpay that talent or try and lowball that talent, because the opportunity to get another talent like that in Sacramento, unless they strike gold in a draft, it's pretty low. So that factors in as well. Finally, before we wrap up, the Sacramento Kings made another signing, a familiar face at least this summer in Sacramento. Boogie Ellis is going to be joining the Sacramento Kings in training camp on a deal. Now, the specifics of the deal were not fully disclosed. Boogie was the leading scorer at USC last season, went undrafted. Of course, his teammate, who had significantly worse numbers than he did, Bronny James, was drafted in the second round. Of course, Boogie was asked about that when we talked to him during the Cali Classic in Sacramento. He kind of played it off. Bronny's his guy, but that, of course, was motivation to him to play as well as he could. And during the Cali Classic and during Summer League, he was impressive, right? His primary skill is scoring the basketball. He is a scorer, 100%. But he shared with us that he really enjoyed showing what he can do outside of scoring the basketball, and he took pride in how hard he plays on the defensive end. And he was playing for a perfect coach to learn and adapt to the defensive side of the ball at the NBA level in Doug Christie during the Summer League. I think Boogie Ellis absolutely deserves this opportunity, absolutely deserves this look. There's a good chance that he doesn't make the team and that he ends up in Stockton with the Stockton Kings. Who knows? Like, I would not pen him into making the roster, especially with the amount of guards that the Sacramento Kings already have that you know for sure are going to make the roster. As of right now, Boogie is the 18th guy, right? We were talking about an open roster spot on the last episode of Locked On Kings that the Kings still had available at the time. Quickly after that, they signed Boogie Ellis. So as of now, they have 18 guys signed. They still have the ability to sign more players and invite them into training camp on non-guaranteed deals to compete for a roster spot. And who knows, maybe Boogie Ellis is on a non-guaranteed deal. We don't have the specifics behind it. I would put Boogie more in the category of he's going to be playing and fighting for a roster spot in training camp more than, oh yeah, he's going to make the roster, he's going to make the team. There are guys on two-way contracts, specifically Mason Jones, for example, in Sacramento, that I've seen more of and believe he could do more at the NBA level. than a Boogie Ellis at this point in time. So maybe there's a scenario where Mason Jones plays so well that he makes the roster outright, gets a full contract, and then they put Boogie Ellis on a two-way contract. Basically, the whole point is that nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is set in stone for Boogie. We just know now that he is going to be invited to training camp and have an opportunity to compete to make the main Kings roster in training camp, and he absolutely deserves that opportunity. I still would like to see the Kings try and address their wing depth a little bit more, maybe use one of their non-guaranteed contracts to invite one or two veteran wings or just wings, period, guys of the 6'8", 6'9", 6'10 category to come in and maybe compete for a roster spot, because as we know and as I laid out in the last episode, the Kings still need more bodies of that size. But giving Boogie Ellis this opportunity is never a bad thing. He absolutely deserves it, and I'm looking forward to see how he performs in training camp and in preseason. Want to hear your thoughts on the Domantas Sabonis conversation. Do you think that he's worth that money and agree with me? Do you think he's not worth that money? We can dive deeper also into just one-on-one conversations about Sabonis as a go-to scorer and how big of a deal that is and how big of a hindrance that could be or might not be for the Sacramento Kings going forward. It's all fair game. Let's discuss it here in the midst of this offseason. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack, email me mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. For now, we're done. I got to go back to covering NFL training camps out here. Levi Stadium is beautiful. I'm not a 49ers fan, but I love this stadium. Love every chance I get to go. I know the Murray family, Keegan Murray's dad, is a huge fan of the San Francisco 49ers, so I'm sure Keegan and his family will be out here at some point when football season actually starts. So I'm looking forward to that. Appreciate your support, as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.